for that, and if things don't go well, there will be backups. But when you guys are here in this structure on Earth, everything will go wrong. The worst things will go wrong, and we will test you to see, can these crews, are they the right crews? Do they stick together? It's very easy when things go wrong to start blaming each other. Do you stick together and do you solve the problems as well as possible? And that's going to be very exciting, and I think personally that the biggest challenge of Mars 1 is finding the first crew of 4 people that is up to the task. Imagine all of you must have been on a winter sports holiday. Imagine you're in your cabin with your 3 best friends and you get snowed in. And it's really funny, you call your boss, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I can't come. Yeah, it's not my problem, we're snowed in. And after 2 days you start to get a little bit annoyed with each other, and then after a week there's some fights going on, and imagine still being there after a month in a 200 square meter cabin with your 3 best friends, or after a year, or after 2 years. We're looking for a team that can be snowed in a reasonably sized cabin, but still a small cabin, for 2 years before the next crew of 4 people comes to Mars. And that's a really tough job. And then we need to train them for all the things for all the problems they have to solve. But that will be relatively easy compared to finding those people who can do this together. Next slide, please. So then we'll launch our first unmanned mission to Mars in 2016. And I can give you a little bit of news. We're going to announce something very exciting about that next month. So if you're not yet registered to our newsletter, make sure you do, because it's going to be very, very exciting news. And in this mission we'll demonstrate some of the technologies that we need for the human mission that haven't been demonstrated on Mars yet by NASA. Next slide, please. In 2018 we'll send a rover, and the rover is going to drive around on the surface and look for the best location for the settlement. We know, of course, already the whereabouts of the settlement, but the rover is going to really determine a good place with enough water in the soil, flat enough for construction, and make sure that this is the right place to go. Then, next slide, in 2020 we're going to send 6 cargo missions, 2 life support units, 2 living units, a spare rover and another supply unit. And the 2 rovers, next slide please, they will move all the equipment to the outpost location, they will deploy the solar panels, they will activate life support systems, and they will make sure that there's a habitable settlement waiting for the first crew. So there's water waiting, there's a breathable atmosphere, and next slide please. Only if this is determined, if all these systems are working nominally, then we will launch the Mars Transit Vehicle in 4 separate components to low Earth orbit. And when all these systems have been checked too, the first crew will depart to Mars in 2022. And then they will fly to Mars in 7 months' time. Next slide, please. And they will land on Mars, and I believe that this will be the most exciting moment in maybe human history, but at least in our lifetimes. And they will find a habitable settlement, but there will still be a lot of things to do. They will have to install the food growing equipment, they will have to deploy the rest of the solar panels, they will have to install the little hallways that you see between the modules. A lot of things to be done, and they will be very, very busy with just survival for a long time before they have time to do the things that they really came for, like exploration and really building a new society on a new planet. Next slide, please. I've told you that they will have 2 life support units and 2 living units, which is of course for redundancy reasons. They'll also have a lot of spare parts, but what's very important to note is that the cargo for crews always goes 2 years ahead of the crews. We'll have the human settlement, the habitable settlement waiting for the first crew before they leave, and in the same way we will launch the hardware for crew number 2 with the first manned mission. They will be on a slightly slower trajectory, so they will land a few weeks later, but the first crew will have access to the technology of crew number 2. So when something breaks, they will have they will have four fully functional systems of each system, and they will have, of course, still the spare components to fix things. Next slide, please. Then when all these systems are still up and running 2 years later, when it's time for the second crew to leave, only then will the second crew leave. So that means if one of the life support systems has failed before the second crew leaves, then the second crew will actually, the second mission will be delayed 2 years and will send more hardware to Mars first. But assuming everything will be working well, they will leave in 2024 and they will leave in 2025, and in that way we'll have more missions every 2 years. And at first they will be missions of crews of 4, and we hope that when bigger rockets become available, that we'll be able to send bigger crews over time. Next slide, please. So I started with a picture of Mars, and but this all starts here on Earth. What we want to do is organize mankind's mission to Mars, not just NASA's mission or ESA's mission or China's mission, but mankind's mission to Mars. And in each crew we'll have 4 people, 2 men, 2 women, and they will always be from 4 different continents to make this really a mission where the whole world can feel involved. And if we go back to the Apollo landings, I think most people here in the audience didn't witness it, but there's probably a few people who did. And they remember that even if you're not American, the Apollo landings was really a party for the entire world. It was such a big feat. Humans on the moon of our planet. It's something so big that everybody in the world celebrated it. But now imagine doing this as the whole world. Humanity's mission to Mars and 4 different continents being involved in what we do. Imagine what an exciting moment that will be when the first humans land. I think there has never been any moment like that. And that actually is also the way how we will finance it. Next slide, please. So we want to. There's 6 ways of financing that we use in Mars One. And on the top left you can see a crowd. And what we want to do is involve everybody in this mission. And so far we've been quite successful. We're already receiving donations, and we're selling merchandise like this in more than 80 different countries. So people from more than 80 different countries are already contributing to this. And Robert Zubrin, the president of the Mars Society, said not too long ago, if 1% of the people gave you $1 per month, that's less than a beer per month, you can finance your mission to Mars. So it's really not that much money. It's a lot of money, but there's also a lot of people on this planet. So involving people in what we do is one of our ways to finance it. That's the big group of people with small amounts of money. There's also a small group of people on this planet with a very big amount of money. There's actually 200 people on Earth that can finance our first human mission from their personal wealth. So the cost of the first 4 people is about $6 billion US, and there's 200 people that can afford this, that can say, oh, you know what, let's do it. And they make it happen. And we're slowly networking our way into those communities. It's very difficult. There's a lot of people who ask them for money, obviously, because they have a lot. But our plan is so fantastic. It's a dream that you can make a dream come true. And imagine if you had $6 billion US. And just think about it a little bit. You buy a yacht, of course, 100 million. You buy a couple of houses around the world, another 100 million. But then you've still got 6 billion. So what are you going to do with your money? You can't spend $6 billion US. But what you can do is buy immortality. This is Carlos Slim. If Carlos Slim would finance our mission, we would call the first settlement on Mars Slim City. It sounds nice even. And, or Bill Gates Gatesville. I've got all the names ready for all the two. So if there's any billionaires in the room, please come to me up. The third way of financing is illustrated in the top right. It's a little bit difficult to see, but the astronaut is holding a camera. And Arno and I actually started Mars One when we found the revenue numbers for the Olympic Games. And the Olympic Games is also a big event. A lot of people in the world watch it. I think that this will be a lot bigger, and also the media companies that we talked to confirm this. And Arno and I started Mars One when we found that the Olympic Games in London had revenues of more than $4 billion US from sponsorships and broadcasting rights. $4 billion for an event that lasts only 3 weeks. So that's more than $1 billion per month, just because the world is watching, because that's the only thing that the Olympic Games are selling. It's an audience that's watching. So the audience is important because we will ask the audience to make small contributions, but they're even more important because your eyeballs are worth money, and that's a very important way of financing this mission. So I already mentioned the sponsorships, they're kind of included in that, because if a lot of people are watching, then companies are interested to associate their name. And we have, of course, something very exciting. It's not for all companies. Some companies will find it too exciting, but there's a lot of companies that we're already in discussion with that are very exciting about the prospect of humans on Mars. Then, in the somewhat longer term, we plan to receive a lot of revenues from intellectual property. So when we close contracts with our suppliers, we make agreements on revenue share of future revenues of what that intellectual property might result in. So for instance, in recycling, you're going to have to recycle things very well on Mars, because every molecule that you send there is very expensive. From solar panels, technologies, and of course from all the things that you didn't think about, because when they invented power drills for space, they really didn't think that it would be $1 billion industry at that time.